Usually when we want to measure something in life, we expect to use a very simple standard tool, like a basic rule of engineering, right?
Like, exactly.
If you want to build a table, you use a tape measure. 10 centimeters is always, well, exactly 10 centimeters. If you want to know how heavy a box is, you just put it on a scale.
Yeah, it's exact.
Right, it's binary, it's clean.
It's completely objective. We really like things to be visible, to be categorized easily, and just perfectly measurable. It gives us this sense of control over our environment.
But then you step into the world of human communication, specifically the world of learning a new language. And suddenly, that tape measure is like made of elastic rubber.
Oh, absolutely. It gets messy fast.
It does. We're looking at a landscape of human ability that is honestly quite murky. We're trying to measure how well someone can think, react, and connect with another human being.
Which is the absolute definition of a difficult thing to measure. I mean, we're dealing with human brains here with complex cultural contexts and spontaneous social interactions. How exactly do you weigh a conversation? How do you put a ruler next to someone's ability to negotiate a contract?
Or their ability to make a joke in a second language and, actually get a laugh.
Exactly. It's incredibly difficult to quantify.
Which is exactly why we are diving into this today. We have a very clear mission for this custom-tailored deep dive. We are going to navigate those muddy waters of language measurement for you.
And we have a lot of ground to cover.
We do. We are focusing on the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. That is quite a mouthful, so we will just call it the CEFR. Specifically, we're looking at the massive, incredible leap it takes to reach the B2 level and beyond.
And just to clarify, we are not just talking about grammar rules today. We are looking at this through a highly practical, professional lens.
Because language is not just some subject you study in a classroom.
No, it's a tool. It's a tool you use to actually navigate the real world.
Exactly. And to figure this out, we're drawing from a really fascinating stack of materials today. We are looking at a detailed guide on CEFR levels from a linguistics organization called My Linguistics.
We also have the Young Learner's Handbook from Cambridge English to sort of understand how the learning process even begins.
Right. Plus, we have actual course curriculums from the Mobility Friends Training Center to see how these levels are taught in reality. Oh, and a list of core vocabulary from the Oxford 3000.
But the real core of our discussion, the piece of research that ties this all together, comes from a highly interdisciplinary paper.
Yeah, and it was published in a journal called Computer Fraud and Security.
Which, on the surface, sounds like a very strange place to find a paper about language learning.
I have to admit, when I first saw that in our source stack, I was super confused. Why on earth is a paper analyzing how language skills influence career development and salaries published in a cybersecurity journal?
It is a brilliant connection when you really think about it, though. Just consider how corporate fraud or social engineering or security breaches often happen. Okay. They rely heavily on miscommunication. They rely on an employee misunderstanding a slightly unusual instruction in an email.
Oh, wow. I see where this is going.
Right. Or failing to pick up on the subtle manipulative nuance of a phone call. If you do not have a high level of language proficiency, you might accidentally authorize a fraudulent wire transfer simply because you missed the implicit meaning in a message.
Wow. Okay, so a lack of language nuance can actually create devastating corporate liabilities. That suddenly makes this a $1 million issue, not just a spelling test.
Exactly. It's about risk management.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our goal for you today is threefold. First, we're going to define what it actually means to be at a B2 level.
Second, we will explore how this specific level acts as a powerful catalyst for salary increases and promotions.
And third, instead of just talking about language, we're going to actively equip you with a linguistic toolkit. Throughout our conversation, we have woven in 8 essential B2 level words.
These are the kinds of words that high-earning professionals use to build trust and authority in the workplace.
So let us start at the very beginning of the CEFR scale, so we have a clear map of the territory. The framework divides language proficiency into 6 main levels.
You have A1 and A2 for basic users, B1 and B2 for independent users, and C1 and C2 for proficient users, but the journey actually starts before you even hit A1.
Right. If we look at the Cambridge English Guidelines, they have a level they call pre-A1 starters. I find this stage fascinating because it is just so raw.
It really is.
At this stage, learners are essentially just recognizing the shapes of the alphabet. They might understand very simple spoken questions about themselves like, what is your name? or how old are you?
And they answer with single, isolated words.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very much about copying and repeating. You see a picture of an apple, you hear the word apple, and you repeat the word apple.
Like a parrot.
Kind of, yeah. There is no independent creation of language happening yet.
From there, a learner moves to A1, which Cambridge calls movers, and then A2, which they call flyers.
If you are A1, you are relying almost entirely on memorized phrases.
So you can walk into a cafe and say, I would like a coffee, please.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can ask, where's the bathroom?
But the moment the person behind the counter uses an unexpected word, maybe they ask, do you want room for cream? The entire conversation just breaks down.
Yeah, you just freeze because that phrase was not in your mental phrase book.
Exactly. By the time you reach A2, you have a bit more flexibility. You can handle routine tasks.
Like talking briefly about your past weekend, right? Or your immediate environment.
Yes, but you are still actively, visibly searching for words in your head. It's obvious to the listener.
And the time it takes to build this basic foundation is relatively short. The My Linguistics Guide notes that getting from absolute 0 to A2 might take around 40 to 60 hours of focused study.
Assuming you are getting some basic exposure outside the classroom, too.
Right. But then you enter the realm of adult intermediate learning. Moving from A2 to B1 takes roughly 50 to 70 hours.
And then you hit the mountain.
The mountain. Pushing from B1 to that B2 milestone takes a grueling 100 to 150 hours of sustained, intense exposure.
What's fascinating here is the massive cognitive shift required for that specific jump. Why does it take 150 hours to go from B1 to B2?
Yeah, why is it such a huge leap?
It is not just because there are more vocabulary words to memorize. It is because you are undergoing a fundamental transition in how your brain actually processes the language.
Explain that to me. What is the brain doing at B1 that it has to stop doing at B2?
Well, at the A1, A2, and even B1 levels, your phrasing is very linear. You are translating a thought directly from your native language into the second language, word by word, in a straight line.
So if I'm an English speaker learning Spanish, my brain thinks I, then want, then to, then buy. I'm just swapping the words out like puzzle pieces.
Exactly. You're just swapping out the pieces. But as you push toward B2, you have to leave that linear translation process entirely behind.
Okay, so what replaces it?
You start using embedded clauses. You use complex syntax. You are no longer translating. You are actually formulating the thought in the new language.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. You are processing multiple conflicting grammar rules simultaneously without pausing.
You know, it reminds me of learning to drive a car with a manual transmission.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
When you first start, which would be the A1 or A2 level,
Yeah.
you have to think about every single step in a straight line. You look down at your foot, you press the clutch,
Right.
you move the stick, you slowly release the clutch. It is clumsy, it is slow, and if anything unexpected happens, like a car braking in front of you, you panic and stall the engine.
That is a perfect analogy. You stall the engine because your cognitive load is maxed out just managing the basic pedals.
Right. But when you finally reach B2, it is like you have mastered the manual transmission. Your body shifts the gears automatically. You do not even think about the clutch anymore.
Your brain is entirely focused on navigating the traffic, reading the road signs, and anticipating what the other drivers are going to do.
Yes. The mechanics of driving have become subconscious.
And rewiring the brain to make those mechanics subconscious requires deep cognitive restructuring. That is why it takes 150 hours of sustained exposure.
Because you can't just memorize it.
No, you cannot just read a book to learn how to drive a manual car smoothly. You have to spend hours actually grinding the gears until it becomes muscle memory.
Which brings up a really interesting point from the My Linguistics source. Because this 150-hour transition is so long and honestly so frustrating, there is a huge commercial pressure on language school.
Oh, definitely.
The source points out that language schools often mislabel an A2 course as a B1 or even a B2 course.
It happens all the time in commercial language teaching. The school wants the student to feel like they are progressing rapidly.
So they just give them the badge.
Pretty much. If you tell a student, congratulations, you are now at a B2 level, they feel proud. They continue paying for classes and they recommend the school to their friends.
So it is essentially just a marketing tactic.
Yes. There is often a very large gap between the standardized theoretical framework of the CEFR and the actual practice of language testing in a commercial environment. It is crucial to look at this from a highly academic perspective to understand the real metrics of success.
I want to pause right there. You just used the word academic. That is actually the first word from our B2 linguistic toolkit today, straight from the Oxford 3000 list.
It is a vital word for this discussion.
So at a B2 level, academic means relating to education, scholarship, or theoretical matters rather than purely practical or commercial ones. But you could have just said, we need to look at this from a smart perspective or a school perspective. Why did you choose the word academic?
Because academic carries a specific weight, you know? It implies rigor. It implies that the perspective is structured, theoretical, and backed by research.
Ah, unlike the commercial perspective of a language school just trying to sell a course. So a B2 learner could use this in a meeting by saying something like, the research provides an academic perspective on how language proficiency directly impacts workplace success. It instantly elevates the tone of the sentence.
It does. And this ties into another crucial reality about the CEFR timeline. Because human brains are so different, there is no absolute guarantee that exactly 100 hours of study will magically get you to B2.
And there is our second toolkit word right there.
Absolute.
Yes, absolute means total, complete, and not limited in any way.
Why is this a B2 word? If I am at a B1 level, I might just say, there is no 100% promise that 100 hours will work. Why not just say that?
Saying 100% promise is functional, sure, but absolute provides a level of professional precision.
Okay, I see.
When you say there is no absolute guarantee, you are leaving room for nuance.
Yeah.
You are signaling to your listener that while a general rule exists, there are variables like the learner's motivation, their environment, their stress levels that prevent a total certainty.
But wait, is B2 really the holy grail of language learning?
What do you mean? Because honestly, when we talk about all this driving the manual car, surviving the 150 hours, it sounds impressive. But in the context of a modern, fast-paced, globalized office, is B2 really the pinnacle?
That's a fair question.
Or is it just the bare minimum for surviving? Are we celebrating the ceiling when B2 is actually just the floor? It's like building a house. A1 and A2 are just pouring the concrete foundation. B1 is putting up the walls. B2 is installing the plumbing and electricity so you can actually live in it.
That is a very sharp observation. To answer that, we have to look closely at what driving that car or living in that house actually looks like when you navigate into a professional setting. We need to decode the B2 level in action.
Let's do that. According to the Mobility Friends Intermediate Course Program and the My Linguistics definitions, a B2 speaker has a very specific, defined set of capabilities. First, they can understand the main ideas of complex subjects, including both concrete and abstract topics.
This distinction between concrete and abstract is the dividing line in the modern workplace.
Tell me more about that.
Well, concrete topics are physical, tangible things. A B1 speaker can talk about concrete things easily. The quarterly sales numbers, the physical design of a new product, the schedule for next week.
But abstract topics are where the real business happens, right?
Yeah.
Abstract topics are ideas, company culture, long-term marketing strategy, employee morale, brand identity.
Exactly. A B2 speaker can actually follow and contribute to a complex debate about brand identity without getting lost.
Furthermore, the CESR guidelines state that a B2 speaker can engage in spontaneous conversations with native speakers without obvious searching for words.
That phrase is so important.
What does obvious searching actually look like in a meeting?
We have all seen it. It is that awkward 5-second silence where the person looks up at the ceiling trying to remember the past tense of a specific verb. The momentum of the negotiation just completely dies.
It's painful to watch.
It is. But at B2, even if you do not know the exact perfect word, you have enough linguistic agility to instantly pivot and explain the concept using different words so the conversation flows naturally.
The source also mentions that a B2 speaker can understand most television news and current affairs programs without subtitles. I always thought TV news would be easy because the anchors speak so clearly. Why is that a B2 benchmark?
Because television news is dense with cultural references, rapid subject changes, and highly specific vocabulary.
Oh, right. They jump around a lot.
Exactly. The anchor might transition from a story about a complex geopolitical treaty to a story about a local sports scandal in literally 5 seconds. There's no visual context to help you guess what they're saying.
So you have to process abstract information purely through audio at full native speed.
Yes. Now, if we look deeper into that academic paper from Computer Fraud and Security, they discuss a concept called communication competence theory.
Okay, let's get into the theory.
This theory really explains why employers valued this specific level so much. According to the researchers, B2 is not just having a large dictionary in your head.
Right.
Communication competence is the mental and physical capacity to encode, interpret, and correctly perceive messages in a given context in real time.
Let us break down those three words because they represent a massive cognitive load. Encode, interpret, perceive.
Right. Let's imagine a client interaction.
Okay, so it is not just hearing words. If a client says, we might need to rethink this timeline, perceiving is hearing the actual English words. Interpreting is realizing that the client's tone of voice sounds stressed or annoyed.
Yes, and encoding is formulating a smart, polite, reassuring response all within a split second. You are managing a relationship, assessing risk, and navigating social hierarchy simultaneously.
Let us paint a picture for you, the listener, to really highlight the contrast here. Imagine a simple transaction at a cafe, as described in the My Linguistics text. A B1 speaker can perfectly handle conditional logic in a consumer setting.
Right. The barista says a large pastry is $5, a small is $4, but you get one small free if you buy two large.
The B1 speaker hears that logic, if X, then Y, and responds, okay, I will buy two large. They successfully navigate the transaction.
But a B2 professional interaction is an entirely different universe. At B2, you are in a boardroom. You are not buying pastries. You are trying to convince your department to adopt a new software system.
Which is much harder.
Significantly. You have to give detailed reasons for your decision. You have to outline the specific advantages and disadvantages. And crucially, you have to adapt your language dynamically.
That adaptation is key. The Mobility Friends G1 and B2 course specifically focuses on this. They teach how to shift your register.
Shifting register is huge.
If you are a B1 speaker and your team makes a mistake, you might say to your boss, we made a big mistake. It is clear, but it is blunt.
It might even sound a bit too aggressive or panic-inducing in a formal corporate culture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But a B2 speaker has learned to use the passive voice and modal verbs for professional nuance. Instead of, we made a big mistake, the B2 speaker writes in the report, it has been noted that a significant error occurred in the initial phase.
That shift in register completely changes how the speaker is perceived by management. They sound objective, in control, and highly professional.
Which brings us to our next two toolkit words from the Oxford 3000 list. These are words you absolutely need to produce those kinds of professional reports. The first one is accurate.
Accurate is an essential adjective in the corporate world. It means correct in all details. Exact.
A beginner might look at a financial spreadsheet and say the numbers are good, or the report has no mistakes. But a B2 speaker knows that accurate conveys a much higher standard of professional precision.
If you are presenting to investors, you would not say your data is good. You would say, to succeed in finance, your financial reports must be completely accurate and well-structured.
If even one decimal point is wrong, the report is not accurate. It implies a rigorous standard of truth.
And that leads right into our next toolkit word, acknowledge.
Oh, I use this one all the time.
It's a fantastic verb for workplace communication. To acknowledge means to accept or admit the existence or truth of something. It is also used formally to confirm that you have received something.
So instead of sending an email that says, I got your document, you would write, please acknowledge receipt of this file.
Yes. Or, in the context of our discussion about promotions, you could say, employers quickly acknowledge that employees with B2 English are better equipped to manage international teams.
Let's look at that sentence. Employers quickly acknowledge. Why use that word? Why not just say, employers know, or employers agree?
Because acknowledge implies that there might have been a previous doubt or that a reality is being formally recognized.
Oh, I see.
When an employer acknowledges the value of B2 English, they are officially accepting it as a truth that influences their hiring decisions. It is a highly professional way of validating a fact.
What's fascinating here is how reaching this B2 milestone completely shifts a learner's reality. You move from just being a tourist who can survive a weekend trip abroad without getting lost to being an active player who can actually influence outcomes in a boardroom.
You are using the language to manipulate ideas, persuade people, and achieve complex goals.
Which is the perfect bridge to our next major question. We have established what B2 looks like in theory and how it functions in a meeting. But how does this specific level of competence translate into cold, hard career advancement?
Right. The financial side of things.
Yeah, how does it actually affect your bank account over a 5-year period?
Well, we have to look at the economic theories for that.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We're going to unpack the hard data from the academic paper published by researchers Wen and Cao. To really understand why employers pay so much more for B2 speakers, we need to understand two theoretical frameworks the researchers used: human capital theory and social capital theory.
Let us break those down. Human capital theory is an economic concept. It suggests that the skills, education, and knowledge you possess, your human capital, are personal assets.
Like tangible assets.
Yes, just like a logistics company owns a fleet of delivery trucks,
Right.
you own your skills. And these assets directly increase your economic value in the job market.
So language proficiency is not just a hobby. It is a tangible, tradable asset that an employer is willing to buy from you in the form of a salary.
Exactly. But human capital theory only explains part of the picture. The second framework is social capital theory. This focuses on networks, relationships, and trust.
Which is arguably even more important.
It is. Social capital theory argues that professional success does not just come from what you know, it comes from who you know and how effectively you interact with them.
And language is the primary tool used to build that social capital. If you can communicate effectively at a B2 level, you can build trust with a foreign client.
You can subtly gather informal information at a networking event.
Right. You can create mentorship relationships with senior leaders because you can actually engage with them on abstract topics.
So human capital is the asset you possess, and social capital is how you deploy that asset to connect with others and generate real opportunities.
And the numbers in this study prove that B2 is the magic threshold where both of these capitals start generating massive returns. The researchers surveyed 500 professionals across various industries and conducted 20 in-depth interviews. Let's look at the stark reality of the promotion rates.
The data is incredibly striking. For employees who possess an A1 level of English, the average promotion rate within their company is just 10%.
Only 10%.
Furthermore, it takes them, on average, 5.2 years just to secure their first promotion.
But look at what happens when an employee crosses that 150-hour desert and reaches the B2 level. The promotion rate leaps to 30%.
That is triple the promotion rate of the A1 speaker.
Triple. And the time it takes to earn that first promotion drops significantly, from over 5 years down to just 3.8 years.
The financial impact is even more concrete when we examine average salary increases. An A1 speaker might expect an average annual salary increase of around 3%, which, barely keeps pace with standard inflation in many economies.
But a B2 speaker sees an average annual salary increase of 6%. That might not sound like a massive difference on paper. It is only 3 percentage points. But let's look at the compounding effect over a 5-year career trajectory provided in this study.
Let us trace the numbers. Imagine an employee who is an A1 speaker. According to the data table, they might start with an initial average salary of $20,300.
Wait, I think you mean they start lower. Let me check the data. Oh yeah, the A1 speaker might start with an initial average salary of $10,200 in this particular regional market.
Yes, my mistake. $10,200. After 5 years of 3% annual increases, their salary grows to $13,100.
Now let's look at the B2 employee. First of all, because of their human capital, their starting salary is already much higher. They start at an average of $20,300.
Right.
With their 6% compounding annual increase, after 5 years, their salary reaches $28,102.
That is a staggering difference in lifetime earning potential, all stemming from that cognitive shift in language processing.
And it is not just about the money, is it? The study also measured subjective job satisfaction on a scale from 1 to 10. A1 speakers reported a satisfaction score of just 6.2.
They often felt marginalized or frustrated by their inability to fully participate in meetings or social events.
But B2 speakers reported a very solid 7.5 out of 10. They also reported significantly higher scores for work-life balance and overall personal fulfillment in their roles.
If we connect this back to communication competence theory, it makes perfect sense. If you have the ability to encode, interpret, and perceive messages in real time, you experience drastically less daily stress.
Because you're not constantly struggling to understand what's going on.
Exactly. You can resolve interpersonal conflicts before they escalate, you feel understood, and you feel that you understand your team. Your social capital provides a buffer against workplace anxiety.
Okay, but let me make sure I'm wrapping my head around this methodology. Because whenever I see a study that says people with trait X make more money, my immediate thought is, are we confusing correlation with causation?
That is the exact question a good analyst should ask.
Right. Because what if the language skill doesn't actually cause the promotion, What if naturally confident, highly extroverted, deeply ambitious people just happen to be really good at learning languages because they aren't afraid to practice?
It's a valid critique.
And those exact same highly confident, ambitious people also happen to be the ones who naturally step up in meetings and demand promotions. How do we know B2 is the cause and not just a byproduct of a type A personality?
The researchers anticipated that exact critique. To isolate the variables, they used a statistical technique called structural equation modeling.
Okay, stop right there. What is structural equation modeling?
Hmm.
Because that sounds like something you need a PhD in advanced mathematics to understand. Explain that to me like I am 5 years old.
Sure. Think of a person's career success like baking a complex cake.
I like cake.
The final cake is a promotion and a high salary. There are dozens of ingredients that go into that cake. Education level, years of experience, natural confidence, extroversion, and language skill.
Okay, I am following the cake analogy.
Structural equation modeling is a mathematical way of baking the cake hundreds of times, removing one ingredient at a time to see exactly how much each specific ingredient changes the taste.
Oh, that's clever.
The model allows researchers to mathematically remove the natural confidence ingredient and the years of experience ingredient and isolate just the language skill ingredient.
So they can see exactly how much sweetness the B2 level adds, all on its own.
Exactly. And the model proved that even when you account for personality and experience, the language skill remains a direct, powerful, independent variable causing the promotion.
Wow.
Remember social capital. A highly confident, extroverted person cannot build social capital with a foreign client if they literally do not possess the vocabulary to express empathy when the client describes a complex problem. You cannot build a house with just raw confidence. You need a hammer.
B2 English is the hammer.
It is the hammer.
That is a phenomenal explanation. It really highlights that language is a hard tool, not just a soft skill. But the researchers also point out that the value of this hammer is not identical across all industries. They did a sector-specific analysis that reveals some fascinating thresholds.
Different industries have very different minimum requirements for communication competence. For example, in the healthcare sector, at least for certain administrative or basic care roles analyzed in this region, an A2 level might actually suffice for basic, highly structured daily interactions.
In that sector, an A2 level still resulted in a 20% promotion rate.
But then you move to the technology sector. Tech is heavily reliant on complex documentation, asynchronous communication like Slack or Jira, and global team meetings.
So A2 wouldn't cut it.
No. In tech, you generally need a minimum of D1 just to function without causing errors. In that sector, hitting the required language threshold led to a 30% promotion rate.
But the real demands are found in finance and international business. In the finance sector, B2 is considered the absolute baseline minimum required proficiency to even be considered for advancement.
Yes. In finance, possessing B2 or higher correlates with an average promotion rate of 35%.
And for international business, it is even more rigorous. Employers in that sector often demand C1 or higher, leading to a massive 45% promotion rate for those who achieve it. Why is the demand so incredibly high in these specific fields?
The paper explains this through the concept of strategic communication. In healthcare administration or basic tech support, you are largely exchanging concrete information.
Right.
But in finance and international business, you are doing something entirely different. You are using language strategically to gain control over stakeholders. You are using it to establish and defend a corporate image.
You are negotiating high-stakes deals where millions of dollars hinge on the exact phrasing of a contract clause.
Yes, you need intense nuance. If a merger is going poorly, you need to be able to deliver very bad news to a board of directors politely, firmly, and without triggering a panic.
You absolutely cannot do that at a B1 level with linear translation.
And that strategic ability to learn and adapt brings us perfectly to our next two toolkit words from the Oxford 3000 list. The first one is acquire.
Acquire is a verb. At a basic level, it just means to buy or obtain something for oneself, like acquiring a new company. But how is it used in this educational and professional context?
In a professional context, to acquire means to intentionally learn or develop a skill, a habit, or a quality over time.
So instead of saying, when professionals get better communication skills, a B2 speaker would say, When professionals acquire advanced communication skills, they simultaneously build the social capital needed for leadership.
I love this word because it sounds so much more deliberate than the word get or learn.
Yeah.
You do not just accidentally get a complex skill like B2 English.
Oh, you definitely don't.
You acquire it through 150 hours of investment, effort, and cognitive restructuring. It perfectly mirrors the concept of human capital as an asset you build.
Our next toolkit word is essential for that strategic communication we just discussed. The word is adapt.
To adapt means to make something suitable for a new use or purpose, or, crucially in business, to modify your own behavior and communication to fit new, often unexpected conditions.
So your B2 level example sentence would be, in international business, you must adapt your communication style to fit diverse cultural contexts.
This is a critical survival skill in a globalized economy. A B2 speaker knows how to adapt their register.
For example,
Well, if they're speaking to an engineering team in Germany, they might adapt to a very direct, data-heavy, blunt style of communication. But if they jump on a Zoom call an hour later with a potential client in Japan, they must instantly adapt their language to be more indirect, more formal, and heavily focused on consensus building.
the ability to adapt is what actually makes the human capital valuable. Okay, so we have firmly established that B2 gets your foot in the door. It secures the promotions, it increases the salary, and allows you to survive in finance and tech.
It's the launch pad.
Right. But what happens when you need to go higher? What does it take to reach the absolute pinnacle of the CEFR scale? What do the C1 and C2 levels actually demand of a human being?
To understand the thin air at the top of the mountain, we look at the Mobility Friends Advanced Course Program and the My Linguistics Guide. C1 is classified as the advanced level, and the defining characteristic of C1 is the ability to easily recognize implicit meaning.
Let us really define implicit meaning for our listener, because this is where many business deals fail. Implicit meaning is when the true intended message is hidden entirely beneath the surface of the actual words. It is what is not said or what is implied by tone.
Exactly. Give me a concrete corporate example.
Okay, imagine you present a new marketing strategy to your senior vice president. She looks at the slides, pauses, and says, well, this is certainly a very unique approach to our brand guidelines.
A B1 speaker, and perhaps even a lower-level B2 speaker, hears the word unique. They translate it linearly. Unique means one of a kind. One of a kind is special. Special is good. She likes it.
But a C1 speaker hears the hesitation. They hear the specific intonation on the word unique. They understand the implicit meaning. The vice president thinks the strategy is wildly off-brand, inappropriate, and she absolutely hates it, but she is being professionally diplomatic.
That is implicit meaning. C1 also heavily involves a concept called hedging.
Hedging, like bushes.
No, linguistic hedging. It means intentionally softening your language so you do not sound aggressive or overly certain, which is crucial in high-level diplomacy and executive negotiations.
Oh, I see. Instead of stating a blunt fact like, your new product idea will definitely fail in the Asian market, which makes people defensive, a C1 speaker hedges. They say, there is a strong possibility that this specific approach might encounter some significant structural challenges in the Asian market.
Yes, you are delivering the exact same negative verdict, but you have wrapped it in diplomatic bubble wrap so the listener can absorb it without losing face.
The My Linguistics source also notes that C1 speakers have the stamina to understand long, linguistically complex texts. We are talking about contemporary literary prose, highly specialized technical manuals, or dense legal contracts, all without reaching for a dictionary.
And then we reach C2, which is defined as near-native mastery. A C2 speaker can seamlessly summarize and restructure vast amounts of content from multiple spoken and written sources, rebuilding the arguments with absolute precision. Their use of language is incredibly flexible, effortless, and highly nuanced.
But the academic paper introduces a fascinating concept here that proves reaching C1 and C2 is not just about mastering a massive grammar textbook. Reaching this pinnacle requires something called cultural intelligence, or CQ theory.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, CQ is the capability to relate and work effectively across cultures. At the C1 and C2 levels, perfect grammar is assumed. It is no longer the differentiator.
So what is the differentiator?
The differentiator is profound cultural sensitivity. It involves dialect awareness. It is knowing exactly how to say something, not just what to say, based on the specific cultural background of the person you are speaking with.
So a person with high CQ can literally read the room. They understand the unspoken social conventions, the deeply ingrained cultural values, and the hidden organizational practices of the people they are negotiating with.
As the researchers note, the modern corporate boardroom is inherently global and multicultural. Having mathematically perfect English grammar is completely useless if you accidentally insult the CEO of a partner company because you do not understand their culture's specific communication style regarding hierarchy or punctuality.
This brings us to a very sobering reality check provided by the My Linguistics source. They explain why a huge percentage of learners, even those who study diligently for years, will never actually reach C1 or C2.
It is a hard truth in the linguistics community. There are two main reasons for this plateau. First, the formal language testing industry often masks weak spontaneous communication skills.
Wait, how does a standardized test mask a weakness?
Think about a major standardized test like the IELTS. It averages your final score across 4 pillars: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. A highly studious learner might score a near-perfect 9.0 on reading complex grammar and writing structured essays.
Because they can prepare for that.
Right. But they might absolutely panic during the spontaneous speaking section, scoring a much lower 6.0.
But because the system averages the numbers together, their final overall score might spit out a 7.5, which technically labels them as a C1 speaker on paper.
Yes, it is a false positive. On paper, they have C1 human capital, but if you put them in a noisy restaurant to negotiate a contract over dinner, their lack of spontaneous speaking skills means they have zero social capital. They cannot actually function at a C1 level in the real world.
And what is the second reason people fail to reach C2?
This is the most fascinating reason. True C2 proficiency requires deep, extensive, relentless reading habits. You must consume academic journals, dense technical reports, and complex literary fiction. You have to read widely and constantly to absorb the rarest vocabulary and the most complex syntax.
And most people just do not read that much.
Exactly. The brutal truth is that even millions of native speakers do not possess the reading habits required to pass a C2 exam in their own mother tongue.
That's wild.
If you take a native English speaker who only reads short social media posts and sports scores, and you force them to read a 40-page interdisciplinary paper on structural equation modeling in a cybersecurity journal, they will struggle to comprehend it.
That makes total sense. Reaching C2 requires an intellectual curiosity and a lifestyle of deep reading that goes far, far beyond simply attending a language class twice a week.
Which means reaching those upper echelons requires a complete behavioral shift. You have to change how you interact with information globally.
And that necessity for a complete behavioral shift is the perfect moment to introduce our final 2 B2 level vocabulary words from our Oxford Toolkit. These words perfectly describe the psychological shift required to master a language. The first word is abandon.
To abandon means to cease to support or look after someone or something. But in an intellectual or habit-forming context, it means to completely give up an idea, a practice, or a way of thinking.
So to apply this to our driving analogy, you say, to reach true fluency, you must abandon the habit of translating everything directly from your native language.
Notice how abandon carries so much more emotional and decisive weight than simply saying, stop. You don't just stop translating, you must actively walk away from it.
Yeah, it's very definitive.
You must abandon the safety and comfort of your native language framework if you want to survive in the deep waters of C1 territory. It requires courage.
That is a powerful distinction. And our final toolkit word pairs perfectly as the second step to abandoning a bad habit. The word is adopt.
To adopt means to choose to take up, follow, or use a new idea, method, or course of action. It can also refer to legally taking a child into your family, but in corporate or educational strategy, we mean adopting a new mindset.
So our final example sentence is, advanced learners must adopt a mindset of continuous immersion in order to recognize implicit meanings.
It is a two-step process. First, you abandon the old linear habit of translating. Then you adopt the new immersive habit of thinking in the target language. You take this new methodology and you make it your own.
So what does this all mean? We have taken quite an extensive journey through the architecture of human communication today. We started at the very bottom of the tape measure, looking at a young starter, carefully pointing at pictures of apples and copying the shapes of the alphabet.
We followed that hypothetical learner as they spent 50 hours building the foundation of A2 and another 70 hours climbing to B1, mastering the ability to order coffee and navigate simple, concrete transactions.
And then we explored that grueling 150-hour cognitive leap to B2. We saw how the brain fundamentally restructures itself, moving from clunky manual translation to automatic, spontaneous thought.
We saw how a B2 speaker navigates complex reasoning, conditional logic, and the delicate nuance of a professional boardroom.
Most importantly, we looked at the undeniable return on investment that B2 English provides. The academic data from the structural equation modeling is crystal clear. Moving from A1 to B2 triples your statistical chances of a promotion.
It doubles your annual salary increase rate over a 5-year trajectory.
And it fundamentally elevates your daily job satisfaction because it equips you with the necessary tool to build massive social capital and navigate workplace stress.
We also saw that while B2 is the essential gateway for survival in fields like finance and technology, climbing to the absolute peak of C1 and C2 requires far more than just memorizing grammar textbooks.
It requires profound cultural intelligence, a mastery of implicit meaning, and an ability to diplomatically hedge your opinions to adapt to diverse global audiences.
And throughout all of this, we equipped you with an 8-word B2 level toolkit to help you instantly elevate your own professional communication and build that social capital.
Let us review that toolkit one last time. We explored academic, meaning theoretical, rigorous, or educational; absolute, meaning total, complete, and without limits; accurate, meaning exact, precise, and entirely without errors;
Acknowledge, meaning to formally admit the truth of something or confirm receipt. We unpacked acquire, meaning to deliberately learn or develop a complex skill. Adapt, meaning to quickly modify your behavior or communication for new, unexpected conditions.
abandon, meaning to completely and decisively give up an old habit or mindset; and finally, adopt, meaning to actively take up a new idea or method as your own.
I highly encourage you, our listener, to try to actively use at least one of these words this week. Do not just let them sit passively in your notes. Use them in your next professional email or weave one into your next team meeting.
Acquire them, adopt them, and use them to tangibly demonstrate your own communication competence to the people around you.
Before we sign off today, looking at all of this research about the massive time investment required to learn a language raises a rather profound and, frankly, a slightly provocative question about the future of work.
Oh, I always love a curveball at the end. What is the question?
We have spent this entire deep dive discussing the grueling 150 hours required to rewire the brain for complex syntax and the years required to reach C1. But we are currently living in an era where artificial intelligence and real-time translation software are advancing at a truly astonishing exponential speed.
That's very true.
Very soon, it is highly likely that software will be able to instantly translate a flawless, grammatically perfect, highly complex business report from your native language into C2 level English in 3 seconds.
That is a very real, very imminent reality. We're almost there now. So does that mean all of this effort is pointless? Will learning a second language simply become a useless, obsolete hobby, like learning to churn your own butter?
No, I don't think it makes it useless, but I think it fundamentally changes the value of what we are learning. If software can perfectly handle all the grammar, the syntax, and the vocabulary, then mathematically perfect grammar eventually becomes a cheap, automated commodity. It becomes obsolete as a human competitive advantage.
Wow. Okay. So if the machine is handling the perfect grammar for free, what is left for the human being to do? What keeps the human valuable in the global job market?
What is left is exactly what we discussed regarding the upper edges of B2 and the realms of C1 and C2. What is left is cultural intelligence. AI can translate the literal words instantly, but can an AI read the room?
Probably not.
Can a piece of software understand the implicit, unsaid tension between two stressed executives in a boardroom and know exactly how to hedge an opinion in real time to calm their egos without making them lose face?
That's a great point.
Can an app on your phone truly build genuine human trust, empathy, and social capital over a cup of coffee?
That is a fascinating, powerful thought. It implies that the human ability to negotiate, to show genuine empathy, to adapt to social cues, and to navigate complex cultural nuance, the true hallmarks of a high B2 and C1 speaker, will actually become the only language skills that guarantee career survival in the AI future. The basic grammar and the linear translation might be completely automated, but the human connection, the social capital, simply cannot be.
Exactly. The rigid tape measure we talked about at the beginning of the show, the tool that just measures vocabulary size, might eventually be replaced entirely by a machine. But navigating the murky, elastic, emotionally complex waters of actual human communication, that will always require a skilled, empathetic human swimmer.
That is an incredible thought to leave on. The value isn't in the words. The value is in the connection. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today.
We hope this exploration of the CEFR scale and the economics of communication has given you a clear academic map for your own language learning journey and the absolute motivation to keep pushing toward that B2 milestone and beyond. Until next time, keep learning, keep adapting, and keep building that social capital.